if I told you some of the people who will be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes next year were told this year everything looks normal? How is that possible? That's today's medical mystery. Every week I hear some version of this. Dr. Kim, my doctor said my blood work looked great. But deep down, they know something has changed. So who's right? The lab report or the person living in that body? Today I'm going to show you 5 reasons everything looks normal isn't always enough. And stay with me until the end, because reason number 5 is the one I see missed most of the time. Hi, I'm Dr. Kim, a Board Certified Naturopathic Doctor, and my mission is simple: to help you recognize symptoms, understand your lab work, and know what to do next before type 2 diabetes develops. Because I believe something most people never hear. Symptoms are clues, numbers tell a story, but if nobody connects the dots, the story is never finished. So now, before we go any further, I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever been told everything looks normal, but you know something wasn't right? If that's happened to you, type normal in the comments below. If you're concerned we may be talking about you, I created a simple 10-question, it takes 1 minute insulin resistance risk assessment. It's free. Just supply your email and the risk assessment is immediately available. The link is in the description below. Now, let's get started with reason number 1. Normal doesn't always answer the question you're asking. So let me ask you something. When your doctor says, everything looks normal, what are you hoping that means? Most people are really asking, Doctor, can you explain why I don't feel like myself? But that's not always the question routine blood work is designed to answer. Routine blood work is excellent at identifying many diseases and significant abnormalities, but it doesn't automatically explain every symptom or rule out every early metabolic change. These are 2 very different conversations, and that's where today's medical mystery begins. You know, type 2 diabetes doesn't appear overnight. It usually develops gradually. Long before someone receives that diagnosis, their body may already be changing. You can see it. Sometimes those changes show up as symptoms. Sometimes they show up as trends over time. Sometimes they're subtle enough that they deserve a closer look rather than a quick conclusion. That's why I don't stop at everything looks great or everything looks normal. I ask, does this explain what you're experiencing? That's a very different question. Now think of it this way. Imagine your check engine light hasn't come on yet. Would that prove there's absolutely nothing happening under the hood? No, of course not. Sometimes the engine is running perfectly. And sometimes a small problem is developing that hasn't triggered the warning light yet. And your body works in much the same way. The goal isn't to wait for the warning light. The goal is to recognize the early clues, like learning what blood work means, long before a bigger problem develops. That's why I also pay attention to symptoms, along with blood work, which is laboratory trends, together. Now, can I ask you a favor? Have you ever been told everything looks normal, but you still felt like something wasn't right? If that's happened to you, type normal in the comments. I read every one because your questions and experiences help shape the videos I make for this community. So now we're going to connect the dots. Here's what I want you to remember today. Feeling well and not having a diagnosable disease today are not always the same thing. That's why I don't look at one number. I look at the whole picture. I look at symptoms, laboratory trends. I put last year's blood work and this year's blood work together and look at it. Family history. I look at lifestyle, because symptoms are also clues and numbers tell a story When we connect the dots, that's when the picture starts to make sense. So, if the problem isn't your lab is wrong, then what is it? The second reason may surprise you, because sometimes the biggest clue isn't hiding in your lab report. It's hiding in the test that was never ordered. Okay, so let's review reason number 2. Sometimes the most important test was never ordered. So let's go back to our medical mystery. Someone tells me, Dr. Kim, my blood work was great, it was normal. And the first question I ask is, what blood work? Because here's what I've learned. Most people assume every blood test on their lab report answers every question. But it doesn't. Blood tests are like tools in a toolbox. A hammer is an excellent tool unless you need a screwdriver. The problem isn't that the hammer is bad. The problem is using the wrong tool for the job. And healthcare works the same way. If we're trying to understand early metabolic health, we need to make sure we're asking the right questions and getting the right lab work done. That's why I often ask, was a fasting insulin ever checked? And many people answer me, no, I don't know. Others tell me, I've never even heard of that test. So let me be very clear. I'm not saying everyone needs that test, but most people do. But what I am saying, if you're trying to understand insulin resistance, it's reasonable to discuss this with your healthcare professional. Whether the available testing for fasting insulin answers that specific question for you. Now that's a very different conversation. I want you to imagine buying a brand new house. You walk through every room, everything looks beautiful. You know, you've got fresh paint, new carpet, new kitchen. But no one ever looked in the basement. Now, this really doesn't happen in real life because, you know, you've got laws and all that. But a month later, you discover a cracked foundation. Now, was your house inspector lying? Like, no. He simply didn't inspect the foundation. I know this is fictitious, but you come along with me for the ride. Health can work the same way. Sometimes the question isn't, was anything wrong? The question is, did we look in the right place? That's why I never focus on one laboratory number. Now, your doctor may not even know to order a fasting blood test. And I want you to understand your symptoms, your family history, your waist measurement, your blood pressure, your glucose, your hemoglobin A1C, your triglycerides, your HDL, and, when appropriate, other laboratory values that can help complete the picture. Because one clue rarely solves the mystery, but several clues together often do. Reason number 3. Numbers mean more when they're connected. So, if I handed you a 5 puzzle piece, can you tell me what the picture is? Probably not. Now imagine I handed you 500 puzzle pieces. Eventually, after putting the puzzle together, the picture becomes obvious. Laboratory testing works exactly the same way. One number rarely reveals the whole story. That's why I never get excited or worried about one laboratory value all by itself. I want to know, how do all the pieces fit together? Because that's where the patterns appear. Patterns often tell us much more than isolated numbers. That's why I say numbers tell a story, but only when someone reads the entire page. If this is helping you think about your health in a different way, I'd love to have you join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I share videos to help you recognize symptoms, understand your lab work, and know what to do next, where appropriate, before type 2 diabetes develops. If that's the kind of information you're looking for, click subscribe, hit like and the bell button, and I've also created a free 1-minute insulin resistance risk assessment. If you'd like to know if any of what we are discussing today may be part of your symptoms now or in your future, just supply your email and the risk assessment is immediately available. The link is in the video below this description, in the description. Now, let's get to the biggest reason people hear everything looks normal. The first 2 reasons were about blood tests. The third was about connecting the numbers. But reason number 5 has nothing to do with the laboratory testing. It has everything to do with you. Because sometimes the biggest clue in the room is sitting right in front of us. So here's reason number 5. The biggest clue isn't on your lab report. It's you. So let's go back to today's medical mystery. How can someone be told everything looks normal and still end up developing type 2 diabetes a year later? Here's what I've learned after more than 40 years in clinical practice. Sometimes the biggest clue isn't on the laboratory report. It's sitting right in front of me. It's the person. It's your story, your symptoms, the changes you've noticed. Because here's something I never want you to forget. Your body experiences your health every minute of every day. Your laboratory numbers only measure one moment in time. These are two very different things. Imagine taking one photograph of your grandchild. Would that one picture tell you everything about their life? Of course not. One picture captures one moment. Blood work is similar. But it's still incredibly valuable. But it's still only a snapshot. I want you to know what's changing over time. You have to look at values year after year. Or what's moving in the wrong direction, because trends often tell us far more than a single laboratory value. So in Connect the Dots, this is exactly why I say symptoms are clues. Maybe your waist has been changing. Maybe your blood pressure has crept up. Maybe your triglycerides are increasing. Maybe your fasting glucose has gone from 84 to 91 to 97, and now it's over 129, fasting over several years. Every individual number might still be reported as normal, but together they tell a different story. That's why I never chase one laboratory value. I connect the dots. So what should you do the next time your doctor orders blood work? First, ask for a printed copy. Not because you should interpret it yourself, but because it's your health, it's your records, it's your story. Second, keep your laboratory reports together in a file and compare them from year to year. Look for trends, not just whether one number is inside or outside the reference range. Third, if you're still experiencing symptoms, don't be afraid to ask another question. Instead of asking, "Are my labs normal?" ask, "Do these results explain what's happening to me?" That one question may completely change the conversation. So before you leave, I'd like to help you take the next step. As this step will benefit you immensely, take it now and you'll know your risk. I've created a free insulin resistance risk assessment. The link is in the description below. It takes about 1 minute to complete. It's 10 questions. And when you're finished, email me your score. The link is in the description also. I personally read all the emails because they help me understand where people are in their metabolic health journey and what topics would help you the most. And if you're looking for more personalized guidance, you'll also find information about scheduling a coaching session in the description. So today we solved another medical mystery. We learned reason number 1, routine blood work doesn't always answer the question you're asking. Reason number 2, sometimes the test that helps answer your question wasn't part of the routine evaluation. Reason number 3, one laboratory value rarely tells the whole story. Reason number 4, patterns matter more than isolated numbers. And finally, reason number 5, the biggest clue isn't just your lab report. It's you. It's your symptoms, your history, your trends. And when we connect all of those together, that's when the picture begins to make sense. If this video changed the way you think about your blood work, would you do me one favor before you leave? Share it with someone who's been told everything looks normal, but still knows something isn't right. And if you haven't already, I'd love to have you subscribe. I'd love to see you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I will help you recognize symptoms, understand your lab work, and know what to do next before type 2 diabetes develops. I'm Dr. Kim, the insulin resistance doctor, and remember, symptoms are clues, numbers tell your story. Connect the dots before type 2 diabetes changes your life. I'll see you in the next video.